All right. Good afternoon, everyone. So, like to welcome everyone to our AI mandate webinar. So, just as a starting point, I've got a lot of people on the session tonight, which is really good. This afternoon, I should say. So, just out of curiosity, can you just put in the chat where everyone's joining from? I always like to see, which countries and which states and so forth everyone's joining from. Brisbane, that's where I am at the moment. It's got an event here. Brisbane, Melbourne, fantastic. Jason, I literally saw you last night. Manly, fantastic. Canberra, Sydney. No internationals as of yet. Oh, there we go. Jason coming from Singapore. Sydney, the real capital of Australia. Melbourne. A lot of Sydney and Melbourne. Any other internationals? Another Singapore, fantastic. Maybe it's a bit early, maybe it's a bit too early for the Europeans. It's probably what about sort of 6 a.m., 7 a.m. there. All right, so we'll get started into it. This is, if you've watched any of my content, this is probably the thing. Oh, Adelaide, this is probably the thing I'm most passionate about, and I've been talking about it a lot now for the last 3 years. And, to set the framework as to why I'm so passionate about it is that, when sort of at the end of 2022, I went through one of my most challenging periods in WI's history. And, I did what everyone else did from a business standpoint during COVID, we had to do all the sort of cutbacks, and then sort of the sort of second half of 2020, it was game on from a capital raising perspective. And that period of end of 2020 and right up to, I suppose even mid 2022, it was obviously a lot easier to raise money. So we raised a bunch of money, and we also scaled at that same time, opened up an office in the UK, and, we've done all sorts of stuff, to expand the business. And then come the second half of 2022, it became a nightmare to actually raise money. And so I was going through, really, personal hell, business hell. Like I literally, highlight it's one of those periods that you never forget. And pretty much, the day ChatGPT was released on November 30th, 2022, was significant for me in so many different ways. And at a time when I had a sales team blowing up at that time. I had, had basically a significant reduction in our marketing team and all this sort of stuff. So for me, I adopted it straight away. And I find with AI, you're either an early adopter personality, or you may not have adopted it, or you're like me, where you're under relentless amounts of pressure. And it was basically like it was a way to help you manage, so many different things. So I went all in on AI straight from the start. And also, it became a point for me where I also not only went in all in myself, but I made sure our team did as well. So that sort of sets the foundation for why I'm so passionate about why I'm going to be talking about it. Now, I just will let you know, we've scheduled this for an hour. There is zero chance I'm getting through my presentation in an hour, and I'm going to do my best to give as much value as possible in the presentation. And at the end, I'll give you a bit of a high level on what we're doing with the AI summit, because it's going to be it's going to be very relevant for a lot of you. And then also at the end, I'll sort of talk about, some of the next steps from an execution standpoint. So, so basically, as I said, going through that period, I saw it as an efficiency gain when I was under significant pressure. But now, for me personally, I spend anywhere from 10 hours plus a week trying to understand, researching, testing, playing with tools. And because basically I know for myself that I want to stay ahead of what is happening as much as possible. So as soon as new things are released, I'm all over it. I'm experimenting with it. But more than that, I sort of come to the conclusion that it isn't just a tool, it's an absolute replatforming of business. And in that, we've got to change how we think about it, how we actually set things up, and also how I suppose we manage and lead our businesses in what we do. So that was my conclusion I landed to, which is why I said I'm so relentlessly, focused on this. But fundamentally, I think it's an opportunity of our lifetime. And I've been in WI. This month actually represents 17 years, and you only sort of know it when it comes out of your mouth when you say that. And we've had a couple iterations of who we are and what we do. But I've just never seen anything like it. I really haven't. I think it is the greatest time to be a founder in history, and it's also the greatest time to be building a business. The challenge is, however aggressive you are at sort of, I suppose, understanding what's happening, if you have not adopted AI yet, the longer you leave it, the further you're behind. And then the last part is the harder it is to keep up. And I use and the example I use for myself personally is crypto. Now, it's my other passion topic that I talk about is crypto. The challenge is I feel like I made this mistake with crypto in that I didn't adopt hard enough early enough. And even though, some would consider that I was an early adopter for it from their standards, for me, I was late and I wasn't following all the influences. I wasn't trying to understand the trends. I've never been a shitcoin fan, just to let everyone know that. But it's one of those things where if you do not stay up to date with what's happening, you are genuinely being left behind because everything is moving so fast. Like literally in the last 2 months, there is just breakthrough after breakthrough. So the benefits of really going all in on AI is the first one I've talked about is the productivity increase. That's an obvious one. That's an easy one. Everyone knows it. The biggest one that people don't really think about too much, and I think this is one of the biggest ones, is the saving of cognitive capacity. I remember I used to come home every day and I used to be absolutely mentally exhausted, right? And it's because whether it be writing content, whether it be conversations, whether it be brainstorming or so forth, it all sucks up cognitive capacity, right? And so now you've got this technical sparring partner you can have with a whole range of different things in your processes. The third part that I think is the most important part is it's actually saving a team's cognitive capacity because every single person can do a lot more with the various tools. Like suddenly people who have got no design skills can be making edits to images. People that have got, once again, no design skills can be creating images, right? And then likewise from we're obviously a very copy heavy business because we do a lot of promotion. It meant that team members were massively empowered to do a lot more. So the question that people, and I hate this because it always comes up, but so I bring it up is like, is AI overhyped? And then you see commentary around the dot-com boom versus AI boom. Now, if you're around my age or sort of in that range, you will remember the dot-com boom in sort of in 99 and sort of 2000. And there's some massive differences, right? The dot-com boom, it took 5 years for the internet to get to 100 million users, right? ChatGPT got to 100 million users within 2 months, right? At that time, everything was just speculative investment. And it was focused on attention and eyeballs, right? Whereas this is now focused on core infrastructure and everything is very strategic. And at that time on the infrastructure side, it was built reactively, right? And now everything's being done proactively. Someone's just asked, will it be recorded? Yes, it is. And then revenue creation, it took years for that follow through of the revenue. Whereas now in the first half of 2025, nearly 92% of US GDP growth was attributed to AI. That is absolutely insane, or the AI infrastructure being built around it. So, I still think it is underhyped. Yes, there may be valuations that, may in the end run look sort of overhyped sort of for now. But as far as what the potential is, you've got to remember that dot-com era, that spawned what is now, all the sort of all the sort of Magnificent Seven companies all sort of born out of that era, right? From sort of 2000 to 2010, etc. So at that time, it took time for that and you're talking trillions of dollars of value that was created, right? Well, AI, the best thing I've learned about innovation, at first, what it does is it matches its predecessors and then it accelerates exponentially beyond it. So however, whenever you look at the valuations of all the companies like Google, Amazon, Microsoft, etc., just realize 10 years from now, these companies are going to be 5x to 10x what they are today, right? And that is the power. And because you've got factors like network effect, and then also, just sheer adoption, taking place. So then I started looking at, okay, I went looking for some charts really to show what the adoption rate looks like in comparison. And this gives you a nice graphic to help you understand what this adoption rate looks like. This ended up 2024. Now, obviously, it's well past that 800 million user mark in 2025. So you get an idea about how fast this is actually accelerating. So I said it's a very, very exciting time, to be building a business. Then the other part I sort of really looked at, and I did this for some of my other keynotes that I've done, where effectively I just had a simple thesis that if you follow the investments where the hyperscalers are actually investing, right, it gives you a good idea of how much value they think is going to be created. And the truth is, they're absolutely betting their balance sheets on AI infrastructure, right? So whether it be the AI factories, whether it be the GPU chips, whether it be the energy required for them, they are betting their balance sheets on this as a market, right? And they're going very, very hard. The comment that Mark Zuckerberg had, right? He said it's better to lose. I can't remember what the amount was. Better to lose, I can't remember, it was hundreds of billions or whatever, than to actually lose the game in scaling to AGI or to so for me, it's just, you cannot deny it. But the first part for this is just getting your psychology right, around how to actually approach AI. Again, I'm getting asked about replay. Yes, I'm recording it. I'm going to share it with everyone. I'm going to share the slides with everyone. So don't be afraid that you're going to miss out on a detail. I will have to speak fast because I did go for an hour and I've got a lot of slides. So getting your psychology right is really the first part. And this is the mandate for leaders. So the first part is it's no longer if AI will change your business. It's basically, will you be actually leading the change or will you be disrupted by it? Right. And that is for all of us, no matter what business we're actually in. And the second part is you got to think about AI as a strategic imperative, not just a tool that you use on a daily basis. And that changes the way you actually think about, whether it be not just your own, how you use it yourself, but also across your teams. And then also from if you're a founder, if you're a CEO, a leader, etc., then effectively you have to lead from the top. It's the one area that I'm really good at sort of inside my company is no one will ever tell you that I'm not leading the charge when it comes to AI, inside of our business. In fact, one of my team members said it best. He goes, I'm at the edge of what you can do with AI without having any technical skill. And I think that's pretty fair. So, and then the next one is building an AI native culture inside of your business, because effectively you using it is great. Your entire team using it provides massive productivity gains across your team. Now, I mentioned to you how, we went through a scaling up period. We went up to 53 team members. And then effectively in the scaling back period, we went down to 15 team members. And, now we're producing more than what we were when we had 53, right? And I tell you, I can see the pathway for how we can accelerate beyond that. People, by the way, people keep putting up their hands. I'm not really sure why. We're not taking Q&A just yet. If you have any sort of questions you want to ask, feel free to put any questions in the chat and I'll make sure I get to them right at the end as we're going through this. The next one is to address the fears that your team members have, right? Because they will have fear. The harder you go into AI, the more fears that they're going to have around it. And so it's really important to have communications with your team members around AI as a topic, because, they said they do have fears for their job. One of my, and I said, for me, I encourage my team to bring them up, right? So we can have conversations about it. So one of my favorite topics, it was from Peter Diamandis. He was talking about the exponential organization. And I think this also really sets in tone a psychology for how we should be looking to approach our business and also AI at the start. So the first one is the abundance mindset. That is super important when you're going down this path, because effectively, and we're actually naming our conference around this, our emergence conference. We're literally going to be calling it Convergence and Abundance, right? Because if you think about what you are able to create and the pace that you can move at and the tools that will be available to you, I said abundance should be in your head right from the start. The second part is agile resourcing, right? Because you can be clever in how you actually structure your business. You can also, there'll be times where you need more hands on deck. There'll be other times where you don't. Experimentation is super important in this actual journey, because people have got to be allowed to try and fail with different things, right? And obviously you can set parameters around that, but experimentation is really important. And the API economy, whether it be, obviously we talk about it from a software perspective, but it also means from a business model perspective as well. So many more companies now are not building their own internal, sales teams. They're looking down the path of master license partnerships, channel partnerships, licensing. They're going down all sorts of creative revenue models in how they actually scale their business. Likewise, on this API side, integration into tools is also going to be a very important part of this journey. And then the last part is just noting you now have access to a global ecosystem. The beautiful thing that the internet has done and all the tools are being created is it is a global economy that you can access no matter where you are. And I really felt that 2 weeks ago, no, a week and a half ago, we were doing an event in Dubai. It was absolutely insane for me to have people turning up that already have been following us for years. And here I am, an Australian going to do an event in Dubai. So do know that it is a global ecosystem. And likewise, I had it when I go to the UK, etc. Fundamentally, I think these next 5 years are the greatest wealth creation opportunity for all of us as business builders and for the investors on the call as well. I think it's also for you as well. I think it was Jensen Huang who said more wealth will be created in the next 5 years than have been created in the last 20 years. And I agree with him with that comment. And it's simply because of how fast it's moving, the adoption aspect, the network effects, etc. They're all playing out. So as I mentioned before, it is a re-platforming of business that presents a generational wealth creation opportunity. It can obviously turbocharge your productivity. And the exciting part is the building of hybrid teams, right? That combination of how you can utilize AI agents plus, the empowerment of your current team members. Because in all of our businesses, we've all got repetitive tasks, which we have to do. And then from a practical application, definitely companies can supercharge their growth and also their efficiency in the process. So whether it be sales, marketing, support, product development, strategy, whatever it may be, there's so many practical applications, with AI in your business. And then the last one is that, the predictions are that $4.4 trillion of value are going to be created, as part of this. And all of us are aiming for a slice of that 4.4 trillion, right? It just depends on how aggressive we adopt it inside of our companies. So to give some real pragmatic value for everyone that's on the call, just out of curiosity, can you just put in the chat, what are some of the AI tools that you are using right now? Just put into the chat, what are some of the AI tools that you are using right now in your business? Before I share mine, Claude, Perplexity, who else? Copilot, ChatGPT, Pro, Gemini, AI Studio, that's a favorite of mine, AI Studio, Notebook LM Pro, Copilot, ChatGPT, Vanta, I haven't come across Vanta. Interesting, Perplexity, Otter, Claude, all right. Actually, Perplexity comes up a lot. I do, funny enough, no one mentioned Grok. But yeah, so it's interesting to see all the different tools. So for me, basically, if I want to give you my toolkit, because I thought, what tools can I give you that if you go and use these tools in your business, in your daily life, if you go and download them straight after this call, effectively within the next 2 weeks, you'll be able to 5x to 10x your productivity. These are my tools that I use. Yeah, I use Grok personally as well. Actually, I use it for business too. So obviously, I've mentioned all the ones that everyone knows. Apologies for not putting Perplexity in that. I would add Perplexity to this now if I knew how many people were using it. But obviously, Perplexity for me is great from a research and a fact-checking tool in how I actually use it. Number two, this has been an absolute game changer for me. Fixer, FYXER, your executive assistant. So basically, you install Fixer. It runs through all your emails. It perfectly, just so you know, before I actually implemented Fixer, my inbox was at 50,000 plus unread messages, right? So my inbox was an absolute mess. Literally within minutes, it cleans up, it classifies all your emails perfectly for you. Best of all, what it does is it absorbs your tone of how you communicate. And for the emails that you need to respond to, it basically drafts a reply for you in your tone. Unbelievable. Like it claims on the website, it gives you an hour back per day. I would agree with that. I can't imagine operating now without it, right? So that's my first one that I'd strongly recommend everyone try and best of all, you can have a free trial, download it. No commission links or anything like that. Just go and try it, right? So someone's just asked which AI does your emails. Fixer is probably the best answer I have for you. Whisperflow. I discovered this 3 weeks ago. Holy shit. I type typically at about 30 to 40 words per minute. So I'm a slow typer, right? This basically is the best voice to text tool that I have used. The grammar is perfect on it. It edits it real time whilst you're actually talking into it. It works across all different apps that you're working. I think I'm using it. I had a stat tell me that I'm using Whisperflow across 45 different apps. Talk about a power user, right? It takes mine. I didn't put in it. It's taken me up now to between 130 to 140 words per minute. If you just use that, that will be on the path to that 4 to 5x of productivity. Wait till you start. If you just use those two tools alone, just wait till you see how when you read to yourself, shit, I've got extra time, right? You'll learn to fill it, don't worry. But the first time you start to use it, saves you so much time. Now, my other favorite has been Lindy.ai. And especially in the last, I think, month, they actually released. So Lindy.ai allows you to build your own AI agents. When I first downloaded it, and so if someone's tried it beforehand, I couldn't build anything, right? It wasn't working for me. Then I logged back in one day and noticed that you could actually build agents with prompts. So as a non-technical person, I literally just started building out prompts. My favorite one that I use, it's got a meeting alert prep, right? And then I basically made some additions to that where I asked it to provide a summary of who I'm going to speak to, our previous conversations, and I asked to provide to go through do research across their website and online, and then provide me a summary as if I was an investor. So because I'm just so used to seeing information, in a different way, I want to deliver me a certain. If you saw the way it delivers my information to me, it is just the most beautiful thing in the world for someone that goes back to back on meetings. I'll typically do anywhere between 8 to 10 meetings a day, so I can get a beautiful, detailed brief just before I go on that call. And then I've got it for all sorts of other things as well. So I actually spend more time in my drafts now because I've got it proactively creating drafts for me for certain sequences that I'm doing. Incredible game changer for me. Gamma, basically we would create. So effectively, I've got a process of how I sort of create things or how we create things internally. And so whether you want to create landing pages, whether you want to create beautiful documents or anything like that, Gamma is incredible. All you have to do is you have to upload your sort of brand profile into it. And then when you put in all your content, it just delivers back stunning content. Someone's asked, do I use HeyGen? I don't personally. I've messed around with it. I think my team uses it a little bit, but no, I don't use it as much because obviously we've got a sort of full-time editor. But yeah, I agree. The times I've played with it, it's a pretty impressive tool. But these are the ones where it's like absolute productivity hacks. Gamma. And the last one, the one that I've created this presentation on is beautiful.ai. I suck at PowerPoint. Can't even tell you how bad I am at PowerPoint. You can use Gamma for presentations as well, right? But for me, I find just the flexibility that sort of beautiful.ai, it's really, really good. So, they're my 6 tools. I'd say if whichever ones you're not using, first strongly recommend Fixer, Whisperflow. Guaranteed, if you're not using those 2 tools, that's my promise to you in this session is that you can get a 5 to 10x productivity hack for yourself just by using those 2 tools, and then along with Lindy.ai. So, I'm sure if anyone's got any other recommendations, please put them in the chat. Always happy to look at what other people are using to get massive productivity uplifts, but they've been some of the bigger ones for me. So feel free to put your productivity hack tool in the comments, in the chat, I mean. All right, so basically they're my tools I use. So then effectively I've got some pragmatic steps to take for founders, right? So these are some simple things that you can do after this session. The first one is to create your perfect custom or custom instructions for ChatGPT, system instructions, for the others, but you get the idea, right? Because this will become the foundations for everything that you're going to be creating content for or building from going forward. So effectively on the system instruction side, effectively so I'll answer that question at the end, Adrian. On the system instruction side, it's really important for me because the way I think about it, I think about AI as an employee or as multiple employees. So therefore, my system instructions is effectively my onboarding. I want to make sure that when I structure my system instructions, that everything I want to achieve and what I am looking to do with my business is captured in that. So therefore, every bit of content, brainstorming, challenges, ideas I have is filtered through that lens in the system and the custom instructions, right? So everything is aligned with my actual strategic vision. So the next pragmatic step to take is to actually discover your tone of voice. And so if you're like me and you're doing lots of content or you want to start doing more content, it's really, like I said, what a lot of people got frustrated is when, there was different replies coming out of ChatGPT or coming out of whatever tool that you're using, and it wasn't quite in your voice tone. So the moment I actually got my voice tone right, when I actually just uploaded all my previous content that I had written that I liked, then it actually started to really nail it, right? So the best way to discover your voice tone, really simply, is get it to analyze all your existing content that you have, right? Ask it the tone and the themes they're presenting. Get it to actually generate a tone of voice report, right? Because then it just delivers to you exactly how you do it. Put that into a Google Doc, right? Ask it to create the framework for how you communicate, all the pillars, all that sort of stuff, right? And then what I do is I put into a Google Doc, and typically if I'm creating a project, I upload my tone of voice into that project. Or if I'm using AI Studio and I want it to write some content, then I upload my tone of voice into that so that it matches my tone of voice in how I actually use it. And then from there, I just consistently test and iterate from there. So, for me, discovering my tone of voice saved me so much time in all the different content that I was creating. And then likewise, I provided that to my team. So that way, the content that comes out from the company is also got a similar tone of voice, but not as personal as when it's coming out from me. So this was a new discovery for me that I found was really cool. So I was using, once again, I'm an experimenter. So as soon as ChatGPT released their Atlas browser, I thought, I'm going to go and test it out. So effectively, what I asked it to do was I asked it across a week to observe how I interact with the actual browser, how I respond to things, how I communicate, all that sort of stuff. So I created a framework for it to actually do that. And I said it was just basically over a week, right? So all emails, posts, documents, everything I was doing, right? Then I asked it, how did I operate? I actually first asked it about if I was to be, I asked it, what would my personality, if I was to do a sort of common personality test, what would my personality be? And I don't know why I asked that, but I did. And then it sort of led on to this conversation, and it basically delivered me what my leadership operating manual is. So from that, it basically extracted, key recurring pillars for me around how I make decisions, my communication style, leadership architect, workflow rhythm, all that sort of stuff, and also my drivers. And funny enough, I provided that to my team, and I provided to my team on the basis, I said, if you are going to bring me something, as far as an idea, something we should look at doing, bring it to me in this framework, right? So that way it's really easy for me, because what I find is people give me stuff and they just dump information on me. And my brain, whether it's my borderline ADHD or potentially ADHD, I like bullet points, and I like it real clear, simple communication. And I like when people provide suggestions, the reasoning behind their suggestions, right? So it was then basically put into my sort of leadership operating manual, and that helped me as one of the most. And then when I showed it to my team, they were all blown away by how accurate it was. And that's all I did. I literally just asked Atlas to observe how I work for across a week, right? And then obviously and then now the framework that I want to utilize it for going forward is putting that across AI agents with our business, right? So that we can deploy it in various different areas, as we keep on building. And, I've got some big expectations about what's going to happen with AI agents over the next 6 months. It seems to be, it's now the sort of competition platform that all the big LMs are competing over. And I imagine Google's going to be releasing theirs shortly. Next stage is engaging your team. And this is a really important part, because if your team isn't on board, then effectively you're not really going to get the most out of them. So the first part is to address the fear. Will it replace my job? The real reframe is, it's either you embrace it or you'll be replaced by it. Now that sounds really, really harsh, but I think as leaders, we've got to be really clear in our communications around how we talk about AI. Next one is it's too complex, right? So certain things that teams had worried, they thought it was going to be too hard for them to do. When I showed them that I could do it, effectively it does then create a new framework. And we'd have little sort of internal training sessions on how to use various tools and how to get the most of it. Just because you're using it like a pro, it doesn't mean your team is, right? So simple instructions or simple guidance will go a long way with your team. And then obviously, what are the risks associated with doing that? Ultimately, the biggest risk, is around, someone mentioned about sort of concerns around sensitivity of data, right? The biggest risk is actually inaction, right? So, effectively, take whatever steps you need from a risk standpoint, and just know your own boundaries as far as, and there's better people than me to talk about governance aspect. We're obviously a smaller business. If I was a corporate, I'd be getting experts to assist with me in how I structure things from a governance perspective. And once again, that's why we're doing the AI Summit, is to actually bring experts to talk about this as an area. So the actual truth is that AI is already replacing jobs and departments. I saw this stat the other day, and it's absolutely insane, right? So for all those AI consultants out there saying that, oh, AI is not going to take away any jobs, and even some people in leadership, that are on AI have been talking about it, it's already happening. And I think the part that people don't really want to talk about, about why it's actually happening, for me, I think so. There's three truths behind these job losses. Number one, companies have become bloated at the middle management layer. Like the big blow up of sort of, hiring around sort of 2020 to 2023 meant that companies all of a sudden had a lot of middle management, and that impacted efficiency and execution. And it was Meta were the first ones to actually, really acknowledge this publicly and start the culling. And then all the other big tech companies followed, and you see now the other companies as well. So the next one is then this is, this is a hard truth for many people, is that it became an opportunity for companies to eliminate their C and D players. And I'll explain what that means in a second. But that's what it became. And then the third part to it is that companies, and I'm one of them, realize that you could outsource functions for a quarter of the cost of what you were paying for someone sort of locally, right? And then provide them with tools, with AI tools, to basically achieve better outcomes, right? So for me, I think that, and by the way, if you go and have a look at the stats around how much outsourcing is increasing at the moment, effectively these three things that I'm highlighting right here are all documented in the data that's coming out, as far as where the job losses are coming from. Effectively the challenges people that have lost their jobs are now finding new jobs, right? And then likewise, the outsourcing component and the acceleration of growth in outsourcing, all those things are taking place. So this is what I mean by, so when you sort of do, executive training, or you have sort of management consultants come in, they'll sort of come and talk to you about your team members. So effectively an A player, is obviously high performance and a strong cultural fit. B player, high performance, but poor cultural fit. And there's other slight variations of this, or sort of need to have improvements in different areas. C players, good heart, but low performers. D players, it's either low results, or they could have good results, but actually poor culture, destructive to the actual business. So effectively, this C and D column, it's really been seen as an opportunity to eliminate them from the business, right? And focus on the A and B players in the business. So the interesting thing now is that if you think about when CEOs and founders yourselves are thinking about how do I create more capacity inside of your company, it's interesting if you think about your own thought layer about how you do it, the first thing you're thinking about is what can I do with software or technology? So you're going to the technical team, not to the HR team, right? And if you're a small business, you may be the technical team, but just observe it in your own thinking. Your first thought is there a software or is there an AI tool that can assist me with this, right? And then HR, and actually the truth is the second one is can I outsource this function and then utilize AI to train them? The third one is then going to HR to hire someone locally. Now, more and more CEOs that if they're looking to hire locally, they will be forcing that manager to provide a written job brief and why they, as to why they need to hire someone locally versus outsourcing that role. Right. So really important. And actually, if you think about that whole 2021, 2022 period, it was effectively people becoming managers. And then the way they were trying to increase their salaries was they'd try and hire more people. And then they'd be going back to their bosses or back to you as a CEO going, well, look how many people I'm managing now. I was only managing 3 people last year. Now I'm managing 7 people. I deserve a pay rise. Right. And that's basically how that middle management layer got really bloated. So the next step is from a team perspective is to provide a budget and then also a framework to help them experiment. So simple thing you can do is to allocate a small budget. So it could be as little, as $500 or $1,000 a month to teams or departments. Now, the rules you set in place with this is really simple. Number one, you want to have a session where you can identify friction points in workflows or friction points in the business. And then the job of that team member or that department is to find solutions that can solve those friction points. Now, when they go and look for those solutions, they're only allowed to purchase pay by month products. The reason why that's important is you do not want to be locked in for 24 months, 36 months, 48 months, whatever it is, into a product that they may no longer use. This is all about the freedom to experiment with different tools in a way that doesn't really hurt your business from an expense side. And then at the end of the month, review the effectiveness of those products, right? And then decide whether to continue or to cull. Really, really simple framework. You have no idea the difference it will make, right? So it's a simple session, 90-minute session with a team. One of the things, the way we did it was we went around, we talked about, okay, here's some of the tools that I've been using lately. Here's how I've used it. Here's the difference it makes. Here's my friction points that I'm trying to solve, right? And then we had the departments go off and sort of chat to each other and then come back and agree on, what were the key friction points that were actually slowing down or, needed improvement, and then looking for tools to actually solve that. And funny enough, that's how we come across Gamma, right? And then obviously at the end of that month, you're asking them to report on the effectiveness of those products as part of that. So it's a really simple framework. I recommend anyone who's got team members, go and experiment this with your team, right? And then watch the difference it makes. Sometimes you have to coach it out of them. I did find that, some team members were reluctant to share what their friction points were. And I had to ask it in like 3 to 4 different ways. Right. Also, I'll give you something else that I did as well to sort of remove that fear. Right. Actually, I'll cover that now. So the other thing I did was I communicated to my team, I really sort of, because obviously I'm so all in on AI, and I did have a couple team members, worry that, what if sort of AI replaces them? So I just made a commitment to my team because we had been through quite a challenging period. And, we've all worked together now for, between 4 to 7 years. So we've all worked together for some time now. I gave my commitment because they'd been, loyal as far as in that period, that one, I wouldn't basically make anyone redundant because of AI. That was the first point. But it was only on the second point that also they had to proactively adopt AI in their role. Right. And the reason why that was important is because effectively I wanted to enforce that if I was going to give a commitment to not make anyone redundant because of AI, I need to make sure that they're using it in their role so that we are maximizing productivity inside of the business. Simple thing, right? Now, some of you may not be willing to do that, but it was one of the things that was important for me because of, once again, to give context as to where that came from. So the future of work, and I said AI agents is obviously the platform now which everyone is focused on. All the tools being released have an agentic nature to it, right? And they're building that into the actual products. If you want to understand, and by the way, I did a presentation on this, 6 months ago, 5 months ago, right? It's really simple. Before, managing dozens of employees across all departments, now effectively one person will be able to manage their own AI agents. I saw this, I saw a pretty direct post from, the CEO of SaaStar. His name, Jason, is it Jason Simpson? No, Jason Simpson. No, shit, I forgot his name. Anyway, the CEO of SaaStar put out a post just saying, I just had a team member resign. Jason Lemkin, that's it. I just had a team member resign. It's really disappointing. We've been working with me for 4 years. I'm now going to be replacing him with an AI agent. I'd never seen anyone as high profile publicly state that they were going to do that, but I can assure you everyone's thinking it, right? And then the impact is then that one single person can be observing a whole bunch of different areas across the business. So the next part is that AI doesn't start anything and it doesn't finish anything, right? So it's really important that the team members start to think about themselves as managers and supervisors, right? Instead of them doing the task, let AI do it, right? And their job is to make sure that they're checking the inputs that go in for the task itself, and then obviously checking the quality of the AI outputs that come through. And it's one thing is that I'm pretty particular about certain things, right? So early on, I noticed team members were publishing things were very, obviously sort of AI. And so I made sure that we had strict things that we put in there, that things that we wouldn't do from a content perspective, right? But it's making sure that someone has ownership of the checking of the outputs which come out from that. So it sort of shifts from doing all the grunt work to obviously, basically oversight, reporting, and then obviously the high level creativity that goes from it. And the real outcome is how can you keep freeing up team members to basically create new products, drive more revenue, create new opportunities, service customers better, provide more ideas for customers, etc. And then ultimately, and this is the next direction that I really want to move to, is the hyper personalization of new product opportunities, because effectively you will have the data to tailor, right? And you will be able to have more impact with sort of custom solutions for companies, right? So whatever's important for your business, you will have data going forward that will help you be a lot more personalized in what you do. And then the outcome from this, you're seeing some of the most profitable companies profitable businesses in history, right? And they're requiring a lot less capital than beforehand. And I've shown numbers previously about, what some of the big what some of the latest players are doing. I read somewhere just literally before this, where Fixer, who I was showing beforehand, his name's gone from my head as well. Harry Stebbings invested into them when they were doing 1 million ARR. They're now doing 1 million a week. Just absolutely nuts, right? So you get the idea about how fast it's scaling. So the way to think about the hybrid team is that, it's not the human versus the machine, right? It's the augmented teams where effectively you got AI. I said AI doesn't start anything, doesn't finish anything. It's basically doing the middle work. And your team members and AI are working together, with those outputs. And once again, that goes back to everything I talked about with the custom instructions, the tone of voice, your leadership operation manual, all that sort of stuff. You want it to be designed to be in alignment with that. And then the last one is the $4.4 trillion engine. As I mentioned, this is the projected AI is projected to add up to $4.4 trillion in value to the global economy annually. And this is what we're all going to be driving towards going forward, in the way we build our business. By the way, just out of curiosity, for everyone on the chat, who on the chat just put in there, if you're a founder, just put F. If you're an investor, put I. if you're an executive, so on a sort of bit of a larger company, just put an E out of curiosity. Perfect. I, F, F, E, F, E, E. Brilliant. F, I. Good mix. I. Oh, brilliant. Okay, so there's a really good mix of everyone. It's actually pretty balanced, to be fair. FE, perfect. All right, so the next one is then, well, what are we going to expect to come out over the next 12 months? Well, this is my expectation. Obviously, from a development perspective, building application with prompt, that's already happening. Obviously, everyone's talking about vibe coding. The next layer, and this was hinted in a comments from one of the sort of Google leads, talking about it won't just be about vibe coding anymore, where you sort of play around, build something that you can't really actually implement. The next stage will be that integration with your database, with sign-ins, with basically everything that you require to actually make something live fairly effortlessly. So you can see that the UI or the user experience they're going for is where you can prompt stuff that you can actually execute on within a short period of time. Marketing and SDR, scaled outreach, right? So tools like Instantly, tools like Apollo or Instantly, and there's another one that I always forget its name for whatever reason, but you can access anyone now, and then also you can scale your outreach to whatever market you want to go out to, right? Likewise, marketing, Google just literally released a tool yesterday where you can put in your website and it starts creating ads for you. It basically spends 5 minutes on your website, and then it starts producing ads that you can use for advertising. So be absolutely sure that ad creation is just going to get easier and easier and easier going forward. And likewise, Meta has tools for it. Like the hyperscales are doing everything possible to help make it easier for you to spend more money with them and get better outcomes when you are spending that money with them. So sales, there's more and more tools coming out. There's one that I want to experiment with shortly, which is, around sort of qualification aspect. But you can really see how, from a sales perspective, what an SDR used to do, they're wiping out that role. And over time, there will be more and more solutions that can actually do sort of end-to-end sale process going forward. Data, you will be able to easily access insights across your business, because effectively the more they make it easier for tools to integrate, effectively you'll be able to have a lot richer data set for you to be able to make decisions on. And then obviously this one's one that's sort of been coming out more and more recently as well, is the shift from, obviously you got the big models, but then also just building practical agentic applications, for whatever the function is that's relevant for you. So for me, obviously, I'm thinking about how we can utilize AI agents across capital raising. I said, because my fundamental core is that I always think about capital raising from our product. How can we help people access investors? How can we streamline and simplify the process? And then how can we save founders time, just because it's just such a time-consuming activity. So key companies to watch, really easy. OpenAI, ChatGPT, for the productization of AI, watch out for their releases. Again, they did it with Atlas. And now I appreciate, for the perplexity lovers, I realized Comet come out with a browser before ChatGPT, but ChatGPT has an 800 million user base. So whatever they're productizing, typically the other big LLMs will follow from that. And they typically are the ones that are setting the lead. And they're releasing stuff at a crazy pace at this point. So just look for their product launches and look for their model updates. Google's DeepMind, I typically watch what they're doing from a medicine and healthcare perspective, and also what they're doing in quantum computing. In fairness, I do also watch their product updates quite closely as well. Like I wouldn't be surprised if they launch their own agentic browser really, really soon. They typically don't lead with their products. They typically follow, but they would have watched what Comet has done, which was actually built on Chromium, which is obviously, what Chrome is. And then likewise what OpenAI have done, and likely they will follow. Anthropic, I'm always watching what they're doing from a dev tools perspective. They typically basically set the standard, and actually, if you think about it from an enterprise perspective, Claude's really sort of hit the lead, in that regard. I also do use it for copywriting. And NVIDIA, on the flight, I was flying from Melbourne to Brisbane today, And literally on that flight, I was listening to Jensen Huang's keynote speech where he was talking about all the improvements in NVIDIA. Like they are making improvements at pretty much every single layer. Whilst they talk about chips in this, about how much faster they are, they're also thinking about, effectively the Ethernet. They're thinking about every single component of how to, between, your laptop and a chip, right? Or a chip in what he calls an AI factory in a data center. They are thinking about how to speed up every single component and every single process. And likewise, the context around that as well. So they've got strong investment in software, strong investment in infrastructure. So for me, as far as performance and the speed of the future, NVIDIA is being the signal. But beware. So I put a nice little danger sign on this because it's very, very easy to get excited. Now, as I said, the area around governance and, the sort of information, that's not my area especially. So I won't, I'll leave that to others to talk about that. But I think the most important thing to note for all of us as business builders is that, number one, the value of software is going to zero, right? And it's a hard thing to swallow, as someone that's built software myself, right? The value of software is really going to zero. And then, so it's an important question to ask. So if AI is commoditizing software, which it is, right? How will companies build moats? And so you think about all those companies that raise tens and hundreds of millions of dollars, sort of across 2020 to 2022. This is why a lot of the growth stage VCs are having a struggling time at the moment, because often they can't exit the companies that they participated heavily in. But likewise, they've sunk millions of dollars into these companies. So the real game that we're going forward is basically building data dominance in our specific niches that we're in, right? So building our own sort of proprietary and domain specific data. Also, network effects and ecosystems will become super important. And even Jensen Huang talked about, how they're creating network effects with their products, right? So, so however your platform locks in developers, users, in us, it's companies, investors, or whatever you do to sort of bring those ecosystems together, that's going to become important as a moat going forward. And then, of course, domain expertise and specialization. So I come across a really cool company. I think it was 2 days ago. They were targeting a specific vertical, and it was crazy. Their one was EdTech, and it was what they'd built from a platform perspective, knowing that, who they were going after, which is the teachers, were already doing stuff in their area. They had built something which made their lives where they could literally be saving almost hours and hours and hours every single week. And it made it sort of, between 4 to 5 times more efficient than if they were using ChatGPT, right? So this domain expertise and specialization is going to be a key area going forward. So the opportunity for founders, I'll cover this really quickly because, as I said, I'm about to go over time. It's obviously, building AI native companies. And I don't mean just from what you do from a product. I mean what you're using internally, how your team is approaching it, being super capital efficient in what you do, leveraging tools as much as you can, and doing your best to achieve a premium valuation. And I put in the performance growth, the defensibility, all those things are going to be important if you want to get a premium valuation. So Fireflies is telling me that so whoever's got their note taker in is telling me about to end. We're going to go for about 15 minutes more. All right. So opportunity for investors, is basically, utilize, basically when you're doing DD on a company, is just identifying companies that have AI capabilities as a core competency. And I mean, right through the entire business, right? Fund companies that actually have some sort of defensible moat, which is obvious, but very important. Focus on AI native capital efficient businesses, right? Because you want to make sure that every single dollar that goes in is actually maximized. And then the last one is identify companies that can actually capture a share of that sort of, the $4.4 trillion AI opportunity. The other, the final comment I'll make is I think that one of the most important questions for investors to ask is, what is the internal team? Because everyone goes about what are you building from a product, but actually what is the internal tech stack that you are working with and building on? The opportunity for executives, right? Lead the AI transformation, drive capital and talent efficiency across the business, right? So instead of, hiring more people to try and get additional increases in salary, prove it with actual growth from your departments, right? Build AI ready cultures. And then the last one is strengthen decision making through the data, right? Because you will have the capacity to connect up the tools to actually use that. So the true advantage comes from leaders who unite people, data, and AI into a single growth mindset. So basically that sort of covers what I was going to talk about from a workshop perspective. Now, for me, what I want to do is I want to sort of spend a couple minutes talk about how to go from that sort of insight to execution. And I've been working with Ken on building the AI summit. Now, Ken's been someone that's been a bit of a mentor for me, literally for the last year. So we met about a year ago. I met him at an event that I was doing, and he's successfully built and sold 2 businesses. And he's probably one of the few others that I see from Australia that are actively commenting about what's happening in AI. And genuinely, I enjoy his thought leadership and what he's talking about, right? But effectively, we built the sort of content and the themes around the AI summit to help founders, investors, and executives basically execute on it and create their own playbook. So effectively, across one day, we want to help basically people in this space build their strategy, right? That's AI led across their actual companies, execute beyond, testing and playing around with applications, actually align it with strategy and execution across their business, network with other founders, executives, investors, etc. Truth is, I get so much insights from all the different events and the different people I speak to and how they're using various tools. And then the last one is to leave with actually 3 actionable strategies or roadmaps, to basically execute on what we're talking about the day, or you can come and get your money back. For me, AI is the easiest way for a lot of us to accelerate our revenue growth and effectively allow us to move to profitability with our businesses very, very quickly. So it's really designed for leaders. I've said, and when I say from the founder side, it's basically building AI native, capital efficient companies. It's designed for executives that want to lead transformation, scale efficiency, and actually leverage their teams to a greater degree, right? But also doing it in a way which is, got sort of governance in mind. And then for investors that want to improve their investment selection, but also assist their portfolio companies. And as someone that's benefited from shareholders helping, in the business, this is a big one because, the more you can actually empower your portfolio companies, the greater the difference you can make in your own sort of portfolio. So this is who have designed, the one-day conference around. Effectively, we've got general admission, is basically full day access. It's only $295. Like I couldn't do it any cheaper than this, taking out a 5-star hotel, bringing together, leaders from all different areas across, basically the AI, all the different AI areas, whether it be AI agents, AI governance, basically someone like, Tim Trumper as an example, he was one of the directors of Quantium. He's the most known person when it comes to data in the country. He literally wrote a book on AI called Game On. He did that from actually going around to all the likes of Salesforce, Google, Microsoft. He spent a lot of time in the US before actually writing that book. And if you'd like to join us as a VIP, you'll get access to you get all the general admission benefits. You get access to the VIP lounge, network with the speakers, obviously we'll be in there. And other VIPs as well that are joining. Speakers that there, you get to come to the speakers and advisors dinner, which will be before the event. And then also you get priority seating and also priority registration as part of it. So it's $12.95 for the day. So if you'd like to join us, now somehow I've missed out on mentioning all the speakers now. I'll cover that in a second off the top. But to join us, all you need to do is scan the QR code and you can register for the event. As I said, you scan that QR code, you can either register for the general pass. I said, we've made it really cheap, for people to come along because I said, my role is I want to empower people with as much as I can about AI because when I'm thinking about where I get all my information from, there's a few key people. Both of them are actually all of the key people I get my AI information from in Australia are coming to the event. So Ken is a big part. Yash Varma from Empress Capital is another big component. Tim Trumper is another big component of where I also get my information from. So, all three of those guys are speaking and presenting at the event. We'll also have Matt Barry as a keynote as well. Now, obviously, Matt's been a leader for some time in Australia, but he's also been quite a sort of thought leader when it comes to the AI aspect as well. So he's going to be a keynote as well. So effectively, from the investment side, from the strategic side, we've got people flying in from Hong Kong, we've got people flying in from the US to actually come and speak at the event and share their insights. I've just said most of my content I've been previously getting from the US, but the ones that I get it from in Australia are actually speaking at the event to share their insights on the day. Now, part of the day as well, if you're an AI startup and you'd like the opportunity, part of what we're doing during the day is basically going to have a small amount of companies given the opportunity to actually present to the audience their startup, right? For whether they want to create strategic, commercial, or sort of investment opportunities from it. So there is an opportunity that if you'd like to feature, there is a cost to this, of course, because we are a business. Scan the QR code and you can just register your interest. We do curate all companies that we do present or that do feature. So we'll just have a bit of an introductory discussion with you so I can learn a little bit more about your business. So I'm going to encourage everyone to join us for the event. So if you're a company that's looking to feature, scan that QR code. And I'll go back. If you're an investor, an executive, or a founder and you would like to join, scan the QR code and register your ticket. As I said, basically across the day, we'll probably have about sort of 200, 250 guests along. There'll be incredible networking for it. I said, if you saw all the testimonials we got for our business exit summit, we're very good at bringing together people that are actually active in the market, practically doing this stuff every single day, right? And that's the most important thing for me. So my outcome is I want people to walk away with actually execution plans for themselves where they can increase productivity, increase revenue, and ultimately increase the value of their company. So for $295, I don't know how I could do it any cheaper than that. So yeah, secure your ticket. I'll just give it a minute. Now, feel free to ask any questions while we've got that up there. I should say it's going to be on November 14th on Friday at the Sofitel Darling Harbour in Sydney. And it's going to be an all-day event from 9 to 5. So I'll put the link for here as well. So just give me 1 second. I'll put the link for you to come and check out. You can go and have a look at all the speakers that are actually presenting at the event. There we go. You can go to the website, check it out. As I said, we put together an incredible day, and said, if you think, I said, what I spent sort of half an hour, 45 minutes on, effectively, we want a full day of content on actionable topics people go to. So it'll be an incredible day for everyone to be a part of it. And I said, my outcome for this day is that however far you may think you're behind when it comes to this, we want to bring everyone up to speed where AI is at right now, but from an actionable standpoint, not from that's a cool trick. All right. So what I'll do is any questions that anyone wants to ask. Hang on, let me see. Oh, and final thing is full money back guarantee. If you don't feel like you walk away with getting, at least three actionable strategies or execution plans from it, we'll happily refund your ticket, right? So basically the worst case is you get a day of great insights, and networking and so forth. So we're doing our best to make it like there's zero risk for anyone coming along. For $295 to come and learn from the people that said that I get my insights, and to be blunt, like some of the insights I've gotten from Ken, I've actually mentioned this to him, have probably helped me generate, multiple six figures of additional revenue in my business. All right. So, okay. So I'll leave that up there. Is there any questions anyone wants to ask? By the way, did everyone enjoy that session? Out of curiosity, one of the hardest things about doing webinars is you can't see people's faces if they're enjoying it or if you're sleeping. I'm getting hands up, so I assume that's a yes. That's great. Brilliant. Thank you. I like the hands up and I like the thoughts coming in. Okay. Right. Is there any questions anyone wants to ask? Oh, someone's asked about, do I use automation tools like make.com? So I personally don't. I struggle with anything that has any technical aspect to it. So my team proactively uses N8N. So we were previously using not Make. What's the other one? Zapier. We previously had a lot with Zapier. We've now shifted the majority of that, probably about 80% of that, over to N8N. Basically N8N is an automation tool. It's very technical. Technically, but I'm sure once again, I'm sure they'll have it by prompt very shortly because Lindy's done it. I'm sure N8N has done it. But yeah, so my team uses N8N quite proactively. But I think Ken's a big fan of Make. Yeah, I found Lindy was much easier for me. As I said, I'm at the edge of what you can do when you've got no technical skill, just because of sheer desire to want to learn. So I found Lindy.ai was really helpful for me. Any other questions? All right. So from here, I'm going to send an email to everyone with a bit of a recap of this. And obviously I'll put in the links to access tickets and to register, present, and all that sort of stuff. So I'll send that through following, and obviously I'll send through the slides as well for everyone, and also the recording of it too. So just stay tuned for that. If this could be if you think that the summit could be relevant for someone else, then please refer them to it. As I said, we find there's just not enough great AI content in Australia, and we want to lead the charge in that. So make sure you come along. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining my information session, my webinar. Glad you all enjoyed, and I look forward to seeing you all shortly. Thank you.